Let's talk about all of this with Peter Bleksley. He's former Metropolitan Police detective and joins us now. Good morning to you, Peter.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. I know you were speaking a lot on the station about Daniel Khalife's escape and of course, his capture at the weekend. It does seem that police intelligence did play a crucial role there, and they managed to track down a safe house that they believe he was at. They evaded capture there, but found on this towpath in North London, in Northolt. But questions still remain about how he was able to escape, how he was able to stay free for 75 hours in total. And as James Hill just pointed out, whether or not prison officers were involved. 2 have been suspended. We don't know specifically why they would have been involved in the searching of the vehicle. We believe he escaped underneath, holding onto straps of this delivery vehicle. What do you make of this whole affair, and what lessons need to be learned?
And as we've just heard from the news bulletin at the top of the hour, a man has been stabbed in Wandsworth Prison and remains in critical condition. So this is clearly a part of the prison estate which needs very, very close looking at. Perhaps there are failings on many, many levels and possibly many landings, every pun intended there. Yes, there will be inquiries, of course, into Khalife and how he managed to escape. We'll get the answers for those at some point, and doubtless we will get lessons have been learned.
Yes, that wonderful phrase we hear so often.
Which is so hollow, it's almost got to the point where it's utterly meaningless, because in many situations, lessons fundamentally are not learned. But yes, well done to the Met Police. It goes to show that sometimes they do the big inquiries very well, but let's not underplay the role of the public. I'm told there were so many brilliant, public-spirited people trying to dial 999 on Saturday that they couldn't actually get through. And I sincerely hope that one of them is enjoying the £20,000 reward that the Met Police offered on Friday. Yeah,
indeed. Well, you have to be public-spirited if you want the 20 grand reward. But it is interesting also that this was a joint enterprise with MI5, security officers, the Met Police and others working together from this one unit for the first high-profile success for them. And certainly they've been hitting back at critics saying, well, how come this man was on the loose for so long? But the fact that he was sort of found, he's on a bicycle, apparently with his Waitrose supplies in his sleeping bag, suggests that perhaps he was not, as had been, some allegations have been made, been giving help from, say, Iran or elsewhere to make an escape. He would have been in a safe house, spirited out of the country long before then, surely. So this looks less and less like some sort of high-level espionage escape as opposed to something rather more low-level.
We shall wait and see when the facts come out in court. But personally, I think he was probably making it up as he went along, to be perfectly frank with you. Of course, the police will be delighted, as will the government, at his reasonably swift capture, because the worst-case scenario would have been that this was part of a sophisticated plot and that Mr. Khalife popped up at a press conference sitting next to the supreme leader of the Islamic leader of Iran. That would have been hugely embarrassing for the government, and many, many heads would have rolled.
Well, let's talk about something else that's hugely embarrassing for the government, and this is the arrest of 2 alleged Chinese spies, one of whom worked as a parliamentary researcher in the House of Commons for a long time, working for and close to Tom Tugendhat, who then went on to become, as he is now, Security Minister, and also Alicia Kearns, Foreign Affairs Committee Chair, a prominent China critic, actually, but he's a British citizen. He's actually named on the front page of the Times as Chris Cash, a 28-year-old, arrested on suspicion of spying for China. Again, these are charges. He's not been convicted of any crime. So let's talk about it rather more, separate from that individual case, Peter. We don't want to prejudice any possible future legal process. But if there are people working for the what is let's face it, a hostile nation state inside a parliament, working closely with people who do come close to the heart of power in not just our parliament but also government, in the case of Tom Tugendhat, and can influence policy. How seriously should we take that, and what should we do about it?
Extremely serious matters potentially here. Now, of course, generally speaking, keeping the nation safe in terms of spies and espionage rests with MI5, and keeping the nation safe beyond our own borders is the responsibility of MI6. but they do work closely with the police. And it's the Metropolitan Police that guard the House of Commons very, very carefully. So much so that you will remember a few years ago, Keith Palmer, a very courageous police officer, gave his life in the protection of the House of Lords and House of Commons, rather. So there needs to be some joint thinking here. There's an awful lot of deference about getting into the Houses of Parliament in terms of the security that you have to go through, and that is absolutely right. But when in the building itself, it's almost like a throwback to days of doffing caps and bowing and scraping in certain regards. And some of these barriers, I think, need to be taken down in order that the police and the security services can do their job, that they can challenge, that they can go into any office that they deem fit in order to keep the nation safe.
I mean, there is definitely an issue in Parliament in terms of, sort of, you know, anyone who's not an MP is called a stranger, and again, you say the doffing of the caps, and sort of they're treated as little mini gods on the parliamentary estate, which is definitely unhealthy. But the thing I'm confused about is the ability to get a parliamentary pass. When I first applied to work in Parliament back in, which was 98, this was around the time of the Good Friday Agreement. I have Irish heritage on one side, an Irish grandfather who, it would appear, made up his identity in his name. That meant a 6-month delay in me getting a parliamentary security pass because they couldn't verify. You have to go back, you know, grandparents, parents, you know, parents, other partners. And I mean, there's a lot of security that goes into it. I find it extraordinary that someone who's worked in China, as the person who's accused has for some years, that wasn't, you know, not anyone who works in China is a spy, of course not, but certainly something to be investigated and something to be looked at before someone would get a parliamentary pass.
Absolutely, same as if somebody had been based in Moscow for some months or years. One would quite naturally have a look at the application. But, you know, we live in this world sometimes where people are almost afraid to actually do their job properly.
Yes, nailed it.
There is nothing wrong in carrying out stringent and appropriate checks on anybody, whether they're looking to work in Parliament, the police, or the prison service, because they're all in the news at the moment. Yeah. And look what's happened when the police have lowered the bar in terms of standards with their entrance. Yeah. They've got some absolute wrong uns amongst them that should never be within a million miles of policing. Perhaps the bar has been lowered in terms of parliamentary access, passes, and who can work there, and there would need to be a very, very close look at all of that.
Absolutely. As soon as you get actually, very quickly, I'd love to hear your thoughts on front page of the Eye today, that 3/4 of police officers who've been accused of sex assaults and violence against women are still working on police forces. In the Met, it is 88%. If they're accused of these crimes, often talking about domestic abuse. And basically, we had Luz Casey with her report into the Metropolitan Police saying, you know, it should be automatic, mandatory, that you should be suspended if you're accused of these sort of crimes in the wake of Wayne Couzens, David Carrick and the like. The trouble is, if someone's accused of a crime, it's not the same as someone actually being convicted of a crime. Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, because, of course, there's a very big difference between knowing something and proving something. Yeah. And, of course, there is evidence. And we know from domestic violence cases across the nation for many years that it's sometimes very, very difficult to gather the evidence necessary to charge someone and get them in court. What you do need is the full cooperation of the victim. And probably while we're broadcasting now, there is somebody in a relationship which is inappropriate and they are finding it very difficult to get out of. Yeah. They have to summon the courage, they need to trust the police, but of course headlines like this today just go further towards damaging the tattered reputation of the police.
Indeed. And just finally, I want to ask you about dangerous dogs. Makes it onto the front page of a number of papers. Home Secretary Sweta Braverman looking into a ban on these killer XL bully dogs. This after yet another child attacked. This is in Birmingham on Saturday. 11-year-old girl, 2 men who went in to rescue her. Thankfully, I mean, they also got injured, but thankfully she survived. These dogs linked now to 9 deaths, including the deaths of 3 children just since 2021. Should they be banned?
They are incredibly powerful beasts. The shoulders and the jaw of them are enormously powerful. They act very, very quickly, dynamically. They are a danger. They are a threat. I get it why people want dogs, why they love their pets, but let's look at the stats here. Yeah. This breed is dangerous. Something's got to be done. We don't need them on our shores.
Yeah, absolutely couldn't agree with you more. Peter Bleksley, always so good to talk to you, get your common sense views and everything. Thank you for that.